The last time I stood in my parents' house, it still smelled of lemon polish and old furnace air. Every Saturday, Mom had wiped down the baseboards, even when her hands grew too brittle for much else. She used to say dust made a house feel unloved. It had been 4 days since she passed. The funeral was small, just close family and one neighbor who brought over a lemon pound cake no one touched. I was staying at a small inn, 2 miles from the house I grew up in. I hadn't asked to stay with family. I hadn't been invited. That morning, I came by to help sort through Mom's things. My father, Frank Whitmore, was in his usual recliner, flipping through a flyer for window replacements he'd never buy. He gave me a nod, but said nothing. My sister, Janet, now Janet Lee since marrying Doug, was already in Mom's bedroom, rummaging through drawers. She held up a blue purse. "You know the one," she said without looking at me. "She always kept it under the dresser. It's gone." I remembered that purse, navy leather, worn soft with time. Mom used to clutch it like it held something more precious than what she let on. Frank spoke next, still staring at the pamphlet. "You had the back door key last month, when you took her to the eye doctor." "I gave it back before I left," I replied quietly. Janet straightened. "Unreadable. She trusted you with it." "That's fine, but if you stopped by after the funeral home took her, and something happened to it, now's the time to say." I looked at her, then at Dad. He folded the flyer and set it aside. "I'm not accusing," he said, voice flat, "but she kept some of her jewelry in there, sentimental things. Near the end, she didn't wear them much, but told your sister she stored them safely." Something in me tightened. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Janet crossed her arms. "We're not going to the police, we just want it back." Silence thickened the air, old house silence, the kind that settles deep in the bones of the place. "I didn't take it," I said. Frank nodded, slow and tired. Maybe it was what he feared, maybe it was what he already believed. "If it turns up," he said, clearing his throat, "just bring it back. And maybe give the house a little space for a while," Janet added, her tone sharper now. "We all need time." I looked at them, my family in name, but not in trust. The blue purse wasn't the only thing missing from that house. I left without another word. The next morning, I returned. I didn't want to, but I had to. I'd promised Mom I'd help with the photo boxes. She labeled them by year, even when her memory had started fraying. Frank was already at the kitchen table, sipping coffee from a chipped Cincinnati Reds mug. His robe hung open over a flannel shirt. His socks didn't match. "Sit," he said, eyes still on his coffee. I did. Janet entered a few minutes later, a yellow notepad in one hand, a ziploc of receipts in the other. She didn't greet me, just took the chair across from mine like she was preparing for court. Frank cleared his throat. "We talked last night. Your sister's been checking into a few things." Janet nodded. "A few weeks before she died, Mom told me she put her valuables in that purse, even mentioned savings bonds." "Savings bonds?" I repeated. "She didn't want them lying around," Janet said. "She liked having them all in one place. And the last person she saw alone was you." Frank folded his hands. "There's no sign of forced entry. The house was locked. Only one person had a key." I didn't respond. I knew it wouldn't matter. Janet leaned in. Her voice was soft, but sharp-edged. "This isn't just about a purse. It's about trust. You weren't here when her hip broke, or when she forgot how to dial 911. I was. I sent money." "Money doesn't sit with someone at 3 a.m. when they're scared and confused," I said. Frank raised a hand. "Let's stay focused." "I am," Janet replied, eyes still fixed on me. "You weren't here, but now that she's gone, you're here to go through her things." She let the implication hang like a conclusion I was supposed to reach myself. My palms were flat on the table, feeling the grain of the wood. "I don't want her arrested," Janet said, turning to Frank, "but if she has the purse, we deserve to know." I looked at my father. His eyes met mine but gave nothing away. "We're not filing charges," he said, "but if you took it, bring it back. And then leave," Janet added. "That's probably best." It wasn't loud or cruel, just final. I stood. "You think I stole from her? You're the only one with access," Janet said. "What else should we think?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. I nodded. "All right." Janet blinked. "So?" "I don't have it," I said. She frowned. "Then why?" "I said I don't have it," I repeated, "but I understand what you've chosen to believe." I turned toward the hallway, toward the front door I used to race through after school. Janet's voice followed. We don't want drama, Sally, we just want the truth. I paused at the coat rack. So do I said. I'm sorry you can't see it. I didn't cry on the drive back to the motel. I left the radio off and kept my eyes on the road, like that could keep the rest of me from unraveling. The room was cold, the wall heater whined louder than it warmed. I dropped my purse, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long time, I just stared at the floral comforter, something my mother would have picked out 20 years ago. I unzipped the inner pocket of my suitcase and pulled out a small padded envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a faded Best Buy receipt dated 7 weeks ago. Beneath it, folded neatly, was a note in my mother's handwriting, slanted, careful, just a little shaky. In case I forget where I put things again, thank you for helping me feel safe, Mom. She hadn't wanted a camera at first, said it felt invasive, like spying, but the day I found her searching the freezer for her wedding ring, she changed her mind. I think I'm starting to lose things, she said softly, or maybe someone else is moving them. I don't know anymore, but I want to, I need to. So, I bought a small indoor cam, no bigger than a salt shaker. I tucked it high on her bedroom hutch, nestled among her porcelain figurines, angled toward the dresser. She smiled when I showed her the app on my phone. Just in case, she'd said. Now, in my motel room with the heater rattling and the curtains drawn, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. I opened the folder, dozens of clips, each stamped with a date and time. I scrolled to the day after the funeral, the day Janet claimed she'd stopped by just to sit in Mom's room one last time. I clicked. There she was, Janet, gray sweater, hair pulled back, moving quickly, like she had a plan. She opened drawers, pulled open the bottom cabinet, paused, then reached for the blue purse. No hesitation, she unzipped it, peeked inside, then slid it into the oversized tote on her shoulder. Seconds later, Frank stepped into the doorway. He saw her, saw the bag, said nothing, just watched, then walked away. I watched the video twice, then I sat there, my mother's note beside me, the laptop warm against my legs. They hadn't just accused me. They knew who took it. The next day, I didn't knock. The front door creaked like it always had. The house still smelled of brewed coffee and worn carpet. Frank was in his recliner again, different mug this time. It read World's Okayest Grandpa, though I'd never heard him use the title. Janet stood by the dining table, sorting envelopes into piles. Her eyes narrowed when she saw me. She said nothing. I walked in quietly, the laptop under my arm, a black cord trailing from my pocket like a leash. Frank looked up. You're back. I won't stay long, I said, setting the laptop on the table where we used to carve pumpkins, where Mom once scorched a hole in the tablecloth with a candle and claimed it had always been there. Janet crossed her arms. You came to confess? I flipped open the laptop. The screen lit up. No, I said, I came to show you something. I clicked the file, maximized the video, stepped back. No explanation, no commentary. Janet's voice broke first. What is this? Frank leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And there it was, in crisp grayscale silence, Janet entering the bedroom, rifling drawers, taking the purse, Frank appearing, watching, walking away. When the video ended, the room didn't move. Janet's arms dropped, her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked to Frank, then back to me. I could have it, she said finally, her voice wavered. Back in the spring, when I took her to the doctor, she said she didn't want you to have it. Frank didn't respond, his face was unreadable. I didn't steal it, Janet said, grasping for ground. I thought Mom told you. She didn't, I said. Frank finally spoke. You had no right to film us. She asked me to, I said calmly. She told me she was scared she'd forget where she put things. She didn't want to wonder if she was losing her memory, or if something really was missing. The camera gave her peace of mind. Janet shook her head. You waited, you let us walk right into this. No, I said, you ran into it. I just pressed play. She flinched. Frank placed his mug down with care. So what do you want, Sally? You got your little reveal. What now? I looked at both of them. Nothing, I said. I'm not here for revenge. Janet scoffed bitterly. Then why come at all? Because you accused me. You stood in the house I grew up in and called me a thief, in front of the man who taught me not to steal. You said you wanted the truth. I just gave it to you. I'm sorry it wasn't the version you wanted. I shut the laptop. The snap of the lid echoed in the silence. Frank leaned back in his chair. Well, he said. I guess it's all out now. I slid the laptop back into its sleeve. No, not everything had been said. Janet narrowed her eyes. What else is there? I met her gaze evenly. I'm not the one who should be asking that. Then I turned and walked toward the door, leaving them in the silence they had crafted together. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from either of them. I stayed in the motel, packed, but unmoved. The suitcase lay zipped at the foot of the bed. I hadn't booked my flight home yet, not because I was waiting, but because for once, I wasn't in any rush to go where no one expected me. On the third morning, I walked to the post office and mailed a small padded envelope. No return address, just 2 names typed stiffly on the label. Janet Lee. Frank Whitmore. Inside, I placed 3 things. First, a copy of Mom's note, her crooked cursive, a request for the camera. Second, a photo I'd printed at the drugstore across from the motel, frozen in time, the exact moment Janet opened the blue purse and looked inside. Third, a small handwritten line in my own hand. This was never about the purse. I kept the original note for myself. It wasn't just a request for help, it was trust given quietly, the kind that didn't need an audience. In the last weeks of her life, Mom didn't write much down, but before I left town, she handed me that folded scrap and said, "Keep this, just in case anyone ever doubts you were here for me." I had nearly forgotten it was in my wallet. Later that evening, I checked my email. 1 message, from Janet, no subject line, just a single, sour sentence. "You win, enjoy what's left." No follow-up, no apology, no denial, and no response from Frank, not even a word, just absence, flat, familiar. I didn't reply. Some things don't deserve an answer. 6 months later, I flew back to Ohio, just for the day. The cemetery sat on a small hill above the main road, where the traffic sounded like wind passing through trees. I hadn't been back since the funeral. No one met me there. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. The grass had grown in around the new headstone. Margaret Maggie Whitmore. Beloved mother. Quiet strength. 1941 to 2023 inch. I knelt beside her grave and placed a small bouquet of yellow freesia at the base. Mom never liked roses. She said they came with too much performance. From my coat pocket, I pulled out the flash drive. I'd wrapped it in soft cloth, the way she used to wrap the Christmas ornaments that mattered. I set it gently at the base of the headstone. No box, no note, just the thing itself, quiet, still containing everything they didn't want to see. "You were right to be afraid," I said aloud. My voice didn't carry, it didn't need to. A few rows away, a plot beside hers had already been marked, reserved. The space was etched in stone, waiting for someone who'd never looked back once. I stood for a while, not in grief, but in gravity. There was nothing to forgive, and no one left to ask for it. When I turned to leave, the sun was starting to dip behind the row of pine trees at the cemetery's edge. I didn't stop by the house. I didn't need to. Back home in Arizona, I opened the laptop one last time, not out of anger, not even sadness, just a kind of unfinished ache that needed closing, like a drawer left open too long. The file folder was still there. I clicked through the recordings until I found one I hadn't watched before, dated 3 days before Mom passed. The camera caught her at her vanity. Morning light streamed in from the window. She was brushing her hair, slow, rhythmic, as if the motion itself helped her remember who she was. She didn't know the camera was recording audio that day, but then she looked toward it, not directly, but near enough, and softly, like she was speaking to someone invisible. She said, "Sally, I hope this camera makes you feel better, too. I'm sorry your sister makes you feel small. You were always the one who saw me." She kept brushing, like nothing had happened. I sat still for a long time. Then, carefully, I closed the laptop. This time, I didn't press play to prove a point. I pressed it to survive. Sometimes it's not the accusation that hurts the most, it's realizing how quickly the people who raised you can believe it. They don't ask what happened. They don't remember what you've done. They just look at you like a stranger who walked in too quietly. And even when the truth shows up, undeniable, time-stamped, silent as a video, still, they don't apologize. They just look away, not because they didn't know, but because deep down, they did. Maybe that's what survival looks like for some of us. Not justice, not reunion, just finally seeing it clearly and choosing not to stay in the room when the silence starts. I don't know if you've ever been called a thief in your own home. I don't know if you've ever held a letter that proved someone trusted you more than they could say out loud. But if you have, if you've ever left quietly and knew that was the real ending, just leave a dot. That's all. Just a single period. I'll know what it means.